Welcome to Trailblazing Homeschool. I'm Melissa, a homeschooling mom of 5.
And I'm RJ, homeschooling dad and credentialed teacher for over 8 years. Join us as we journey with families to discover their own path to education.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our second episode of season 2. And today we are going to share a little bit more with you our story of homeschooling, how we got into homeschool, maybe a little why we homeschool, that kind of stuff.
Yes, I know that we did not have kids and plan on homeschooling. It was not our first choice. And we ended up kind of falling into it, somewhat out of necessity, but in the process came to really love it.
Yeah, I actually remember even before we had kids, we had a lot of discussions just about those sorts of ideas. RJ went to public school his whole life, and I went to public school until 5th grade, and then my parents moved me over to a private Christian school from 6th grade through graduating high school. So we had those sorts of perspectives, like our own perspective of how we were educated and our experience. And so that influenced, our conversation and our thoughts and goals for our own family. Neither of us had a ton of homeschool friends. We had our next door neighbors were homeschooled, and I think oftentimes they would have fit more into that awkward, unsocialized homeschool kids. So yeah, we didn't have a huge, group of homeschool people around us that we knew about to glean from growing up. And even we began to meet and get to know more people who were homeschooled in our college years. So that kind of opened our eyes a little bit. But yeah, so coming from a not homeschooled perspective to now where we're at being extremely pro homeschool, it was a bit of a journey.
Yes, and I know that especially being a teacher, which I wasn't, obviously I became a teacher not that long ago, less than a decade ago, but before that I was a tutor, and I saw a lot of public school kids as I tutored them, and it was a learning curve. And my experience was primarily with, like in my personal experience, was obviously public school, but then Christian school kids as well that I would see or meet in youth group and in other things like that. And so I only had a quote unquote traditional school perspective. I had spent like 3 months being homeschooled in 8th grade, and some of my younger siblings were in more of an independent study sort of way. But seeing as I was the oldest, I didn't engage very heavily in that. I didn't really know what went on, so I couldn't even tell you which of my siblings were homeschooled and for how long.
There was usually a couple months because you guys had moved, or your mom was trying to get them into a different
charter school or something like that.
That had a wait list. Yeah, so your mom definitely did not have any desire to homeschool any of you.
No, and it was, like I said, it was more independent study than it was homeschool in a, like, my mom was controlling the curriculum. It was more like, you go and you show up to a school that supports homeschoolers, sort of independent study, and they give you a assigned work, and you go home and you do the work, and then you bring it back the next week and turn it in. And so, and to be honest, my impression of private school was relatively negative as well.
You knew all the bad kids from private school.
Well, actually, I knew some good kids from private school, but what I found is that all the private school kids I knew were Christian schools, and it seemed that they were, by and large, negatively impacted by that, at least in the sense of like coming out of that with any sort of faith. It tended to be a negative thing for them as far as longevity of their faith. And what's the point of sending a kid to Christian school if they don't come out a Christian? Was kind of my thought process. And so
yeah, because it is true, there are many Christian schools, and this is just not to say all, there are also a lot of good schools, but many Christian schools err on the side of legalism. They tend to, push the Bible classes, all of that kind of down your throat to make it an academic track, and instead of focusing on discipleship. I know that was part of some of the experience I had at Christian school, but I also managed to get out of most Bible classes in high school because there were not enough periods in the day to do all the things that kids wanted to do. So I was in choir, and they managed to work it so that choir class also counted as Bible, because we sang Christian songs and we did Bible study once a week. There was that.
Yeah.
They tried. There was an effort there. So
yeah, and I ended up actually, my first teaching job was at her Christian school.
My alma mater.
Yeah. And so that was interesting because I did teach in the Bible department, and so I got to see kind of both sides of that. And I still kind of maintain that Christian school is kind of hit or miss, depending on the individual school, and even to some degree the individual teacher. And that's okay, it's just the way things are. But so basically what happened is we had our daughter, and she started to reach school age, and there was a pretty much brand new classical Christian school that was actually using our church facilities, and we had good relationships with the people that were in charge of that. And so we decided to put our daughter in there in kindergarten, pre-K.
So I, at the time, RJ was working full-time as a teacher at that Christian high school, and I was working part-time between during tax season at my tax job, and outside of tax season I was working part-time at the church doing different things at our church. So Kira had been at the preschool that our church ran, and then that preschool had to shut down because of budget issues. So she was hitting that age 4 pre-K age, and the classical Christian school was there. Like RJ said, we had really good relationships with all the people at that school. We had friends that worked for the school. They were literally renting rooms in our church building up in Northern California. And so, the class size was minuscule. So when it came time for, we needed Kira to stay in some sort of preschool, pre-K program just due to our schedules. So we put Kira into that classical Christian school. And it was awesome. We loved that school. There was so many good things there. She was there for pre-K and kindergarten. And it was, it was classical. Their theology was more reformed, and we were not reformed at that time, but we were okay with, her being in that school. She learned a lot. We loved the teachers. And so I thought, oh, this classical education, this is it. I love this. We're going to do whatever we can to follow this and keep her in private schools, because we see the degradation of the public education system in California in particular, but as a nation as a whole. At that time that she was entering that grade, RJ's youngest brother was still in public school in Southern California, and we were just seeing the quality of education he was receiving. Both of his younger brothers were still in public school here in Southern California, and so we just knew that public school was not the right fit for us at that point. So we had her in there, and she loved it. Her kindergarten class size was 5 kids. So that gives you a perspective of how it was. Actually, the pre-K class was bigger than the kindergarten class, just because of families moving in and out. So
they taught her cursive. They
taught her cursive in kindergarten. She was memorizing poems and Bible verses, and she was loving it. That's really what it was. They were fostering her love of learning.
Yeah.
And so it was a really good environment for her to be in. But then life changed.
Yes.
So
I the job I had, which I loved, I thought I was going to be content there for the next 40 years, teaching. They decided to change their program functionally, and so my job got axed, and that put me into a crisis. But long story short, we ended up deciding to move to Southern California, back to Southern California, and I was going to go back to grad school. And in doing so, I started looking for jobs. I found a job at a Christian school down here. And it just so happened that Christian school was not just a high school, it was a K-12 school. And part of my being a teacher there was that I got reduced tuition. And so for second grade, she ended up going to, or first grade, sorry, she ended up going to that school for all of first grade.
Yeah, so we moved down back to Southern California. RJ was working and going to grad school at the same time, so that was fun. We had 2 kids by this point, so our oldest was entering into first grade. We thought, well, it would look probably bad if we didn't put our daughter into the same school that RJ was working at. And again, we thought, it's not a classical school, but at least it's a Christian school. We don't want to put her in public school. So we enrolled her and got her, she got the last spot in the first grade class there. Now, the campus was in a different part of town. So we lived literally across the street from the middle school, high school campus, and then the elementary campus was in a different part of town. So she would get up early and go with RJ, and they had a little shuttle bus. Well, not a little shuttle. They had a normal-sized bus that shuttled the kids between the 2 campuses. So she got to ride the bus to school, which she thought was great. But that was an eye-opening experience, switching from our, tiny little tight-knit classical Christian school to this well-established, rather shockingly large Christian elementary school. So the elementary school was packed. The high school and middle school did not have as high of enrollment at that time. They were still, I think, recovering from economic stuff, a decade ago. But it was a shock. Her class size was 27
at least.
I mean, it was big. And there were 2 first grade classes, like 2 teachers. So there were 2 full classrooms and 1 aide that bounced between the 2 classes. It didn't help that I had no relationship with anyone at this school, no relationship with any of the parents or families. So it was a rough year. I was not used to the first grade is different than kindergarten. There's a lot more work. They're learning to read. So it was kind of just a shock for me of the differences. And then, I wasn't able to be as involved with her at the school like I was at her other school because I had our oldest son and, couldn't take him with me places, to go volunteer in class and whatnot. So, yeah, that was interesting. It was hard for me to move her to that school. Just the way they did things, the rules that they had, it felt more like a Christian public school in my mind.
Yeah, at least its scale was public school scale. It's kind of skipping over kids if they're doing okay. Same thing. And then on my side, I was teaching at the high school, and I was strange. I had high schoolers and I had middle schoolers every single day. And so most of it was high school, but there was a few middle school classes thrown in there. And like Melissa said, I would walk with our daughter up to the main or the high school campus. She'd get on the bus, she'd shuttle down, and then in the afternoon, they'd shuttle her back up. And she'd come to my classroom after she was done, and we'd walk home together. So that was great. That part was great. But after a year working there, I realized that I just wasn't a good fit for this particular school. And I questioned too much is functionally what happened. I think it was kind of, they were happy to see me go and I was happy to go. And I left with a bunch of other people. There was probably 5 or 6 other teachers and the high school principal that all left that same year and kind of scattered to the winds to go different things. Some left teaching altogether and some didn't. But at that point, we were in a transition because we had no need to stay where we were currently living and really no means to stay where we were currently living. I had decided that for my program, I was going to have to go and be at school during the day. So I was going to have to get some other sort of job if I had a job.
You could not work a typical full-time job. You couldn't get another teaching job if you were going to finish your master's program.
Exactly. And so, and we knew that because of that, we were going to move, and we were going to move about 45 minutes away from where we were living at that time, back closer to my family. And that put us in a transition because we hadn't moved yet. We didn't want to enroll our oldest daughter in the public school there only to move her a month or two in to, because we were looking for a house in the new area. And so we didn't want to enroll her and then pull her out and enroll her in a new school. And it just so happens that one of my friends, actually my youth pastor's wife, had gotten a job at an independent study charter school in the area, and basically they support homeschoolers. And so we kind of said, let's give it a shot, right? This, at least for a little while, we'll see what happens.
It was basically like there were no good Christian schools in the area that we were moving to. There really weren't any classical Christian schools in the entire county where we were living. So we weren't going to be driving, 1 hour and a half, 2 hours to get to the kind of Christian school that we felt called to. And we had tried to reach out to, there's a homeschool group called Classical Conversations. A lot of people are part of that. And that's kind of the classical homeschool movement. But for some reason, we never heard back from them. We just didn't connect with that group. And so, we decided to go along with this charter school that would allow us to homeschool. And we figured, well, we'll homeschool for now and just see, maybe we'll find a good, charter school in town, or maybe we'll find a Christian school that works. So we started homeschooling, and it was second grade for our daughter, and it was interesting because I also had a 1.5-year-old, almost 2-year-old.
And we're pregnant.
I had a 2-year-old at the time. I was pregnant with number 3. RJ was home certain days, but not other days, because he was commuting 1.5 hours away to his college campus. So it was definitely a unique experience. We just kind of did a lot of experimentation and didn't try to push anything too hard. We didn't say like, oh, we're going to do this curriculum and, school is from this time to, because it wasn't practical. It would not have been practical for me. I couldn't sit and school her, for X number of hours a day and take care of a 2-year-old and be pregnant. And at the time, I was running a business from home, a service-based business. So it required my time and energy to be on the computer doing work or on the phone or whatever. So
and our friend who kind of introduced us to it had homeschooled her own kids, and was in the process of homeschooling her own kids, and they were a little bit older than ours was. And so she kind of had been through it a few times and was just really gracious, really helpful. And so for that whole year, I really wasn't involved very much. You did everything with, as far as meeting the requirements for the charter. I kind of helped out here or there, especially when our daughter would start to break down and cry. But outside of that, I didn't do very much. And then the following year, I was looking for a teaching job. I realized that although I would love to go finish my master's, it just wasn't tenable financially and time-wise. And so when our friend was like, hey, they're looking for teachers, I was like, sign me up. That sounds good, right? And so I got that job, and I've been working there ever since. And it's been great, and it's opened my eyes to the benefits and just the quality that homeschool has to offer that public school does not. Because I've been in public schools, I've been in private schools, I've been mostly at the high school level. And so I got hired as a high school teacher in this independent study charter school. and then had them like 2 months after I got hired say, oh, by the way, you can start taking, or we're going to make you take younger kids. And I was like, no, don't give me anyone below like 5th grade. And then I ended up with kindergartners and stuff like that. And it was good, but it was a learning curve and getting to see kind of all steps. And so I have supported literally kids in every single grade from K through high school into like junior college, in the sense like concurrent enrollment, where they're high schoolers attending college classes and doing college work and their high school work on in addition to that. And so, and facilitating all of that. And so seeing and being able to see, being put in a position where I can see what is required, what does it look like, being exposed to lots of different kinds of curriculum, lots of different styles of homeschooling, has been immensely helpful for me, and just kind of helped me to fall in love with homeschooling as a whole, because it gives me the opportunity to say, like, here are some things that have been tried, here's what's gone well, here's how you work with particular kinds of students, kids who are gifted in this, or are not so gifted in this other area, and how do we work through these things, and how can we tailor education to the individual kid.
Yeah, and for me, that first year in particular, it was important for me to get connected to a community, to not just be homeschooling out on my own, not being connected to any other homeschool families. So we were blessed enough that the area that we were moving to, so again, it's only a 45-minute drive difference. We're in California, so we talk about things in drive time, not drive distance.
Yeah, it could be 5 miles in 45 minutes.
Exactly. If you're listening to this outside of California, you're like, why are you saying 45 minutes? It was miles. I don't know how many miles it is. So we were blessed that there was a Christian homeschool group co-op in the town we were moving to. And so I was able to join that even before we moved and start to connect with women, go to park days. And then once we moved, we were able to sign up and join the co-op, which is once a week. And that, I think, was probably the biggest asset to me as a homeschool mom, because I was surrounded by other homeschooling families. I was able to get my kids connected to other homeschooling kids, so they, Kira didn't feel isolated, and there was stuff for all of my kids. So, again, at that time we had 3. We had our oldest was in school, and then the younger 2 were little.
Toddlers?
I mean, yeah,
like functionally toddlers.
We had Killian was like 2-ish, and Liam was a baby. He was a brand new baby. So, but I was able to go with everyone on Fridays to this co-op, and they ran it as far as schedule-wise like a school. So it was like, okay, we have first period, second period, lunch, third and fourth, and you sign your kids up for different classes, but it's not teachers, it's not, we're not paying people to teach classes. It's just different parents volunteering to teach the classes. And so that was really neat. I got to just be a helper the first semester, and then offer to help teach or run different classes. So that's been really, really awesome. And just being surrounded by other homeschool moms who had more experience than me, that I could go, what am I doing? Or have you tried this? Or, just being able to see what they're using to teach classes. I had never even heard of Story of the World until I signed Kira up for a medieval history class and saw that's the curriculum that my friend was using to run the class. And so, this is one of many resources that I'm sure we'll be sharing with you guys over the time of this season, and on our website and social media accounts as well. But so that was really big. I think if I had not had a community of other homeschooling families around us, that it would have been very discouraging and very lonely, and just I would have felt very lost for much longer, because I wouldn't have the people. It's so much easier when you have a person that you can go, hey, have you tried this, versus just kind of spending eternal hours on Pinterest or Google.
Yeah. Well, and just the kind of the camaraderie And for the kids as well, that they can get out and they can do things and they have friends and they see them every week. And so they're not completely divorced from kind of that social aspect. Not to say that I think it's like you'll hear from anti-homeschool, like, well, how are your kids going to socialize? And like most homeschool kids I know are more socialized than public school kids because they're not spending, 6 hours a day functionally only talking with their peers. As where in a homeschool environment, they spend much of their time talking with their siblings, with their parents, with their friends, and with their friends' parents.
And with their neighbors, with the people at the... that's the thing, like our daughter, her best friends, she would never have known if they went to a traditional school setting because her best friends are a grade or two above her. And so she would have never gotten to see anyone outside of her grade level except for 15 minutes at recess and possibly 30 minutes at lunch how would she get to know them? She wouldn't.
Exactly.
So that's really good. She also helps take care of the younger kids, like you can see the older kids keeping an eye out for the younger kids and helping in nursery class. And they just and talking with, actually having conversations with other parents or with high school kids or whatever, they're learning how to socialize with all age ranges.
Yeah.
And not, again, like RJ was saying, not just being stuck in a room with a teacher and everyone their same grade.
Yeah. And like we show up to co-op, and since we still have like really young children, we have our youngest just turned 1, for the last year, 2 years, 3 years, like we show up to co-op and some of the older kids almost immediately come and steal our youngest children.
Oh yeah.
Just to go play with them.
All those middle school and high school girls are like, give me that baby. I want to, hold the baby.
Which is great for us.
Yeah. It's really nice when you have a lot of kids that people want to hold your kids. So yeah, and it's great. So it's a really thing. So if you have worries about how your kid's going to socialize, that is the lowest of the low worries on the I'm switching to homeschool. Oh my gosh. No, like it's a totally bogus concern unless you literally live in Siberia.
Yeah, and you don't go anywhere and don't try to do anything.
Yeah, unless you are like hermits in your home, your kids are going to get socialized.
And especially since like what it does is it frees you up to do other things. So our kids don't just socialize at co-op. We hang out with these people relatively frequently, even outside of co-op days. So it's park days, it's going over to hanging out. Last week we had, my daughter and her friends, and like the families got together, and our daughter and her friend baked a bunch of cupcakes for my youngest birthday.
Yeah, at our friend's house while the boys played Pokemon cards.
Exactly. And so it's like and they could be involved in, gymnastics classes or other things that they're doing. They can, go and hang out with grandma for the afternoon or for the morning. Like all those things become available where they weren't before. Because, and like doctor's appointments get easier. Like if you do anything like that, you want to do anything during the day, like we've done homeschooling from the other side of the country, where we were there for my grandma's birthday. And so we flew everyone out, and like middle of a school day, we're out on the USS North Carolina, walking through a World War II battleship, and that counts. Like that's schooling that day. And it doesn't matter that she's 6 years old or 7 years old at the time, maybe not, maybe 8, 9, but our now 6-year-old, who was 4 then, still remembers that and still talks about that.
Oh yeah.
And so even though he was only 4, but that's where it's like there's these memories, there's these, and they got to spend time with more family than they've ever met before until that point.
True. Yeah, so that's where we are at now. Our daughter is in 6th grade this year.
Which makes us old.
Yeah, we feel a little old. Our oldest son, he is in 1st grade. So this has been an interesting learning curve for me, having our son go through pre-K, kinder, and 1st grade in homeschool, whereas I didn't homeschool Kira until we started 2nd grade. So this is my first time, going through shoot, I got to teach you how to read. How do you teach a kid how to read? I don't know. I outsourced that last time.
And I'm not really much help with that because I am really good with high schoolers and junior hires, but teaching kids to read is where it scares me the most, but we're learning.
Yeah, so we're on this journey too. We don't have everything figured out,
or even most things,
but we're figuring it out together. So yeah, so that's where we're at. He's in first grade. Our second son, third child, is 4.5, so we're kind of doing pre-K type stuff with him. Then
alphabet numbers.
Yeah, our other daughter is 2, so she just tags along, makes messes, and interrupts lessons constantly. And then we have a 1-year-old who also tags along, it makes messes, and interrupts lessons constantly. So
and shoves stuff in his mouth.
Yeah, exactly, and dumps out cups of water.
Yeah.
So it's a fun adventure.
Every day.
So we've got that spread. We are still involved in our homeschool co-op group. It looks a little bit different this year because of COVID restrictions. We're not allowed to have our all-in-one Friday co-op. We used to meet at a church building that we would rent for the day. So that looks different. We're meeting in people's homes currently and just doing smaller groups and smaller activities, trying to do as much as we can based on the restrictions we're under. So we're trying to make the best of it, but we do still socialize our kids. Some of their classes are on Zoom this year just for ease of everything. And that's been working. We're just kind of rolling with it and making it work, and we can still do a lot of things. A lot of the things that we like to do with our kids is to get out. We like to watch, we like to go hikes and explore different places and go to museums and things as they're open.
Go to the ocean, go to the mountains, go to the lake.
Yeah, exactly. We don't like to sit at home all week long and be stuck inside.
Saturdays have become our let's get out and go do something.
Adventure day, yeah.
There's no emails for me to answer, so.
That's true. RJ doesn't have to be tied to work. And then we watch a lot of YouTube and documentaries, and we have experimented with a lot of different curriculums, different styles of doing homeschool. So those are all things that we will be talking about this season, which is kind of a good transition to what's coming up. We are going to be starting the Homeschooling 101 series on this podcast. I think we reached out to our Instagram followers and our local friends and just kind of asked what questions do you have? What do you want to know about homeschooling? And so we felt that it would be really important and helpful to all of you to do a Homeschooling 101 series. So over the next few weeks, month, who knows, however long it takes us to get through all of our topics, we will be just going through what it looks like to homeschool, how to homeschool. Our next episode is going to be talking about when is it time to leave school, public school, private school, leave traditional school. So that's going to be a really good conversation. I think we're doing it together.
Yeah.
Just how to know.
I have a lot of experience talking to people who are in the process of leaving.
Yes.
And so I get a lot of, for my job, a lot of people who are like, hey, what does this look like? How do I do this? And especially now with COVID-19, I've had a lot of those calls as well, especially over the summer. There was a lot of them being like, you're the only person I know who knows how to do this. And so someone will refer them, and then I get a random call.
Yeah, it's been, the demand is high, so we want to be here to give you as much resource as we can. So along with that, coming up in October, we don't have a date set yet, but we will be hosting a free webinar that is going to be all about getting out of public school. And so stay tuned for more details on that, but we just wanted to let you know that's coming down the pipeline. So it's going to be a good time, on video where we are going to be both teaching and sharing information, but also opening it up to everyone who registers to be able to ask questions. And then we'll just share more about what we have to offer on that. So that's our story, and we're sticking to it.
Yep.
We'll definitely be sharing more of, obviously, our experience and things in future episodes based on what we're talking about. But we thought it'd be good to help you guys know us a little bit more and our story of how we ended up homeschooling and how we're homeschooling now-ish. So
It changes.
It does. We very much take it one day at a time sometimes. But yeah.
Best laid plans.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay. Well, thanks you guys for listening in. We are excited to share more with you this year. And if you're not already following us on Instagram, please make sure to go follow us at Trailblazing Homeschool on Instagram. And our website, our beautiful website that is still in process, but it's up, is trailblazinghomeschool.com. Head over there because you want to get on our email list so you get the first notification of when registration goes live for that Escaping Public School class, webinar, whatever you want to call it. So get on there so you'll get that. And also we're going to start sharing more resources and more information out to our email list specifically. So you don't want to miss that. We will talk to you guys next time.
Sounds good. Bye.